All right, let's talk about heuristics and ways that we think and problem solve. So let's start with trial and error, and that is exactly what it sounds like. You just try a bunch of things until one works. An algorithm would be you actually going through every possible way to solve that problem step by step. So if you were looking for ketchup, you would go down every aisle in the grocery store until you found it. And a heuristic is like a shortcut. So if you were looking for ketchup, you might start in the middle of the store next to the condiments because you have a good idea that that's generally where it is. Okay, there are lots of different types of heuristics. A lot of people use heuristics all the time because it essentially allows you to solve problems without having to think through a new solution each time. So here's just a further explanation. These are fun little puzzles you can do and basically kind of work through some of these mental things that we talked about. So trial and error, algorithm, or heuristic. I'm gonna let you work through these. Remember, think out of the box. Okay. If you want the answer, I have it and I'll give it to you. All right, so let's talk about mental sets and functional fixedness. So mental sets basically means that when we are presented with a problem, we kind of tend to think through it in the same way that we've done so in the past. All right. Now, the problem, of course, is that each problem or each new situation could require a different type of solution. And so when we just use what we used in the past, that's not always effective. So functional fixedness. This means that when you see something, you tend to only see its specific use and not all the other ways that it could exist and be used. So the example they have down here is the box of matches, the candle box, and then a candlestick, and how you could kind of orient those things on the wall. How do you mount that on the wall? Okay. So what they're saying is that often if we've done something in a certain way, we generally tend to think that that is the only way to do it. So if you see a pencil, we generally tend to think about, well, the only thing I could do with this is to write with it, right? But if I were to ask you all the different ways that you could use a pencil, some of you are going to say things and you're going to perceive a different function. Okay, I've had a lot of students say they could use it as a weapon. Okay, that's one option. I've had people say you can use it to tie up your hair, right? If you can twist your hair enough, you can kind of stick the pencil and use it to keep your hair in place. You can use it how you did when you were a kid. I don't know if y'all had pencil fights, right? There are different ways that we can use one object, different functions. And if you have things in your house, you can kind of think about this too, how you can organize or reorient things. So let's talk about biases because we all have them. So what are biases? This is basically when our brain uses something that helps us generally, but can, allow us to miss certain pieces of information. So, anchoring bias means that when we are trying to solve a problem, we don't look at all the information equally. We pick out a certain part of that and kind of hone in on that and then use that to make a decision. Confirmation bias, which I'm sure you've heard about before and which is very, very common, is when we are given a plethora of different information about a topic, but we only focus on what confirms our existing beliefs. And most of the time, these biases occur below a level of awareness. So you would not recognize yourself doing it, but I bet you recognize other people doing it. Okay, so the idea is that once we recognize other people, we want to try to see if we can see it in ourselves, because of course we have the most control over ourselves. The next one is hindsight bias. So this is when I've had multiple students tell me I should have seen it coming, like when they got in a car accident or when something very bad befell them, when they could not have seen it coming. It would have been literally impossible. But oftentimes, once something happens to us, we report that we should have seen it coming. Okay, so we report that we should have known it all along, like that phrase, hindsight is 2020. So representative bias, okay, is our general tendency to see someone and make assumptions about who they are based on stereotypes. So, or something. It doesn't matter what it is, but we generally, as human beings, tend to see something and have a shorthand for it. And then that can cause us, obviously, to get the wrong information because we don't know those people. And the last one that I want you to pay particular attention with, and I'm sure is affecting your life right now, is something called the availability heuristic. So this is when we make a decision or decide or come to a conclusion based upon information that's readily available or very recent, even though just because something is top of mind doesn't make it factually correct. So, for example, if I asked you, How were you more likely to die? A shark attack or a random piece of an airplane flying out of the airplane and hitting you on your head? Most folks would say, what? Think about that. I'm not going to tell you the answer. Okay? And I want you to think about why you gave that answer. Generally speaking, you're going to choose the answer that has just top of mind. So basically, we make decisions not based upon how likely something actually is to happen, but how recent something is in our memory, which is pretty wild.